Good evening, my brothers and sisters all around this fragile, blue, corrupt planet. This is Dave from the depths of the Wolf's Den, producing for my beloved friend Deatra and Dr. Wil Spencer. Dr. Wil Spencer and Deatra, you have the soapbox, the spotlights, and the mics. Go for it.
Really do. Oh my gosh, you are just so wonderful. Dr. Wil, I am so happy to have you with us again. It's been a whole week, and I know you're out on the road making house calls, so there is a possibility that we could lose you here and there, but no problem. We'll be able to pick you right back up. Yesterday, Drake was on with me, and we were doing some Q&As and what with him. And, Doctor, some of the big concerns, as I know you're aware, are the chemtrails and the radiation and all that. That's coming over from Fukushima and so on and so forth. Anyways, I know for a fact that you have a great line of products. I want you to go ahead and tell us about that. I'd like you to help educate us on the damages or how bad is this radiation and so on and so forth to us. I mean, there is so much. And but before we do that, I really want to say this. A lot of our listeners know that I've been through some surgeries here this year due to skin cancer, and the last one was just earlier this month. And guess what, Dr. Wil? Using the products you have been supplying me with and proper nutrition, following your diets, you can hardly even tell that I ever had every bit of skin on my arm removed. It has already grown back except for a few little tiny itty-bitty spots that you can't even see. And there doesn't even appear to be any sign of that skin cancer left in any of that area. So I wanted to let you know that and kind of give everybody an update, because this is great. I mean, you're valuable to us, and I don't know what I'd do without you.
I don't know what I'd do without me either.
I know, So maybe go ahead, Wil. I was going to think maybe we could kind of start with the radiation.
Radiation? Well,
radiation.
From my research, there's more radiation coming from the nuclear plants in this country than Fukushima. So, there's radioactive isotopes being dumped on us through the chemtrails. There's radioactive isotopes coming through your pharmaceutical medicine. There's radioactivity being sprayed on your crops in the form of inert ingredients within the pesticides themselves.
Oh,
so
okay. I didn't know about the radiation. I didn't know about the radiation and the pesticides.
Yeah, and you can actually find that if you do some digging. It's buried deep within the EPA website itself. If you look at the inert ingredient list of what the EPA considers acceptable ingredients that could be hidden underneath the inert ingredients, and there's like 4,000 different elements, and most of them is industrial waste that can be disguised as inert ingredients. And if you look at your wasp spray, your bug spray, your dandelion weed killer, things like that, if you look at that, it'll say inert ingredients 99 or 96%.
Right.
That can be one of 4,000 or more different industrial waste products, and a lot of it is radioactive. So we're being bombarded all around. You can actually now go and you look at kelp in the organic store, and there are people that are noticing they're buying it and then running it against their Geiger counters, the little more sophisticated one, picking up radioactivity.
Wow.
So,
continue,
well,
please.
I don't put a whole lot of weight in it personally. It's just a fear tactic because there's more radioactivity here in this country than there is coming from over there. And Dutch Sense does a pretty good job at monitoring some of that, especially the ones in the Midwest. For instance, the one in Chicago or outside of Chicago or Gary, Indiana or wherever, I mean, that's giving off fairly high amounts right now. But I don't really worry about it too much because I know what we have in our products are able to decontaminate the radioactivity out of our body, as well as the heavy metals associated with not only radiation but chemtrails, the conventional food chain, and all the other chemicals that are in our environment. So nature has its benefits. You just have to put nature back in because it's not there anymore. It's very deficient.
Wow. Well, I do know that you were saying about pesticides and bug sprays and stuff like that. Now, one of the things that I have learned over the years is lemongrass works really, really good, and it covers quite a. If you just put a little patch of it, even in a flower pot, at the corner of each corner of your yard, that'll keep the mosquitoes down.
Well, that's one of the things.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that works very well. It's getting a little more challenging as the overall health of the planet and us as a human species becomes diminished in our overall health. The pests seem to be liking us even more because it's just nature's way of bringing a balance. If you are unhealthy, if you were a plant out in the fields and you're unhealthy, nature sends in the pests to digest you, to break you down, and to make food for the next life form. It's no different nowadays. That's why we have the fungus is at epidemic proportions, in my opinion. I found out yesterday to another researcher friend of mine, coming from inside the military war machine, that they have now weaponized some candida strains, and I run into this a lot. The candida fungus is making homes in people's lungs and their sinus cavities, in their soft tissues, and it really is only supposed to be in your GI tract. It's not supposed to be outside of your GI tract. But because of people's health is so diminished, it has a home area. It's just doing its job, though. And now we have these weaponized microorganisms, not only anthrax, but I would consider E. coli and salmonella and staph.
Right. Now,
also
E. coli is not just from something I learned, and it was like kind of a hard lesson. But E. coli also is not just from like going to a restaurant and eating some bad food there. E. coli is it comes in a few different forms. At least one other one that I am very familiar with is what they referred to as a vaginal E. coli, which actually comes from the kidneys. I know this only because of the fact that my daughter had it when she was 9 years old, and it spiked her temperature way, way up. She was actually hospitalized for 10 days because it could not break the fever. That came specifically from, she had a kidney infection, or she got a bruised kidney is what started it. When we had gone skating and she got into a collision, her kidney got bruised, and that's where the whole thing started from. Or at least that's what we were told.
Well, E. coli is a necessity. It's just when it goes pathogenic that it becomes a problem in our bodies. It's part of the microflora that lives within us. But the problem today is because there's a couple of different problems, really, why specifically E. coli has gone a little bit crazy. Because the animals, especially the conventional beef trade or industry, takes and ships the cattle, the young stock, to these feedlots, and they're fed basically industrial waste products, in a confined area, which drives up their E. coli in there and creates the systemic E. coli problem. And then when they're shipped off to the butcher, and if anyone has ever been to a conventional butcher shop, a butcher factory actually, you'd be mortified at how things are handled, especially like McDonald's meat and so forth. But the E. coli then it just gets spread like crazy because the animal is full of it, systemically unhealthy, and then the butchering practices are very unhealthy, unsanitary in itself in the big factories. I used to haul meat, so I know. We used to raise meat, so I know how this is from my own personal experience, as well as when they genetically modify. And if you take a look at the patents, they're kind of hard reads, but they explain how they've altered. They've genetically modified some of the E. coli, and then they use what's called the gene gun, and they're actually embedding the foreign genes in with E. coli and shot into some other cells, and they actually use the E. coli to hold the genetic modification.
Right.
So there's, and genetic modification right now is in over 70% of the food chain, as well as organics. The labeling laws have been weakened to the point where they can have 30% plus conventional products, which could be potentially genetically modified components in the organics food. And now we have the agrobacterium, which they've also genetically modified to hold the genetic modification within the plant, going systemic outside of the regular conventional fields, which that alone doesn't even get considered to be in part of the organic standardization testing. They don't look at bacteria, genetically modified bacteria in the soil, which is now being airborne, which we're finding just going crazy in people's bodies, which is part of this Morgellons and some of these new fangled diseases we have going on. So the E. coli, in my opinion, is necessary for our immunity, but it's only when it goes systemic outside of its parameters. But the good thing is, and epigenetics is saying this is the new science today coming out, that it's not the specific strains that cause the problems per se, but in order to hold the balance is what's required inside of us is a broad spectrum of microorganisms, and they all hold each other in check. And we've got scientific data that we've run some tests to substantiate that we have over 350 different strains of microorganisms or probiotics in our products. When you take them the way we suggest, the E. coli, Salmonella, Staph, Strep, Candida, and about 14 other opportunistic microorganisms, they virtually cannot go pathogenic, and if they are pathogenic, they will be knocked back down and put in their parameters when you introduce these other microorganisms into the internal environment. So there is a balance that nature has. It's just we haven't had it for quite some time because the microorganisms have been killed off in the environment and in the food chain. So now we're left with a depletion, and we're suffering from that depletion.
Right. Now, getting back to radiation a minute, one of the things that I learned also is that our own bodies also put off a certain amount of radiation. Is that correct?
To a point, yes. The radiation, we're definitely not getting off nuclear reactivity, but cellular metabolism on an extremely low level has we're electrical magnetic generators. We're radiating frequencies all the time. Our thoughts create radiation from our brain, so it depends on what. We're not radiating nuclear.
Right.
Nuclear frequencies, if that's what you're talking about.